that we're doing the kind of things that we need to do to make the business profitable long term. So we've got a couple different ways to look at it today. One is going to be from a recruitment perspective, and the second side of it's going to be from a dollars and cents perspective. What do we need to do, and what is the value of having a high performance culture in your business? All right. So again, my name is Steve Brock with Action Coach. You'll notice the format of the slide deck is a little different today. And that's because while we're huge fans and agreeably a little bit biased about the Action Coach content, it is always our desire to bring in outside resources as well so that the business community can be as productive and as well informed as possible. So today's presentation was actually put together by a company called Cinduit, but the content resonates exactly and is in parallel with the Action Coach teachings that we've been going through over the years. So let's get rolling. When you think about a company culture, I always think of a culture as the fabric that holds a business together. And we're going to go through some exercises. So if you haven't done it yet, if you would grab a pen and some paper, because we're going to do a little bit more writing today than normal. But what I want you to be thinking about is, what do you want your culture to represent to the community? And that community has, in my mind, three parts. One part is the team that work with you on a day in and day out basis. And when you think about the people that work in any company, they spend more time in that company than they do anywhere else in their lives. You know, more than in their homes, more than with their existing family. And so the company becomes an extended family from a culture perspective. So that's the team internally. It's also the customer base, and I'm going to throw in there the suppliers as well. How does your culture integrate with the customers that come on board, as well as the suppliers that you bring into the company to not only interact with your team, but help provide great things to the customer base? And the third is the greater community. You know, you guys have heard me say this 1,000 times, but it's my belief that it's the Bailey Business and Loan from, that fantastic, It's a Wonderful Life at Christmas, which, by the way, only can be viewed in black and white. But it's the Bailey Business and Loan that does all the building and development and engagement, all the hiring, all the living in every community across the United States. And so what impact does your business have on the greater community of Greensboro or Winston or the Triad or wherever you happen to be sitting right now or listening to this later on the podcast? All right. So give some thought to the three people that the culture of your company is going to impact. When you think about what your company stands for, now we're really getting towards the points of culture within your business. So when I think of a company, a lot of businesses have visions, that's great. A lot of businesses have missions, that's fantastic. And those are usually defined when the business gets started, and then they just kind of sit there for a long time. What I don't normally see is a defined culture statement for a company. And it's my belief that that culture statement is probably at least as important, if not maybe a little bit more important, than the vision and the mission. So the question becomes, what do you stand for? How do the people in your company, how are they supposed to interact? How do you use this culture statement as a backdrop to making good decisions for hiring, good decisions for bringing on suppliers, and maybe good decisions for bringing on customers? And we're going to go through a few examples today of how culture has disqualified people from being part of some of the businesses that I'm involved with. You know, when you look at Action Coach, we've got 14 points of culture, and there are 5 that I wanted to highlight very quickly because they're the ones that resonate with me the most. One of them is abundance, that there is plenty for everyone. And it really goes against that scarcity mentality that a lot of people have when it comes to attracting customers. The second one is gratitude. You know, being grateful for the things that have come into your life, things that have come into your business, and being grateful for the relationships that you have both inside the 4 walls of your company as well as externally. One of them is communicate. You know, one of the things that can destroy relationships more than anything else is a lack of communication. Look to any research when it comes to relationships between parents and kids, husbands and spouses, business owners and their team, when communication breaks down, there is no way for that relationship to be as effective as it should. The fourth one is fun. Gang, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, the long and short is that you are going to suck at it. And if you suck at it, it's going to be really hard to keep customers. It's also going to be really difficult to keep the right people on the team, and it's going to be really difficult to be profitable. So make sure that where you're spending most of your waking hours is a place that almost all the time, it can't be all the time, but almost all the time, is a place that you enjoy going to, that you have fun at. And the fifth one that I'd like to highlight is education. We always have to continue to be in a lifetime development process. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of Bill Burr, who's a great comedian, and he talks about how his wife is a finished product that should be seen in a museum under glass, and that he is that building in New York City that constantly has scaffolding around it when people are wondering, when is this thing ever going to be finished? So from an education perspective, make sure that you are investing the time. 1 book a month, every month, going to 1.5 books a month, every month, going to 2 books a month, or 2 consistent podcast reviews, something that's making you stronger and better as the person who runs the business. All right. Now, those are 5 of the 14. My question for you, and this is the first thing I'd ask you to jot down, have you defined the culture within your business? Now, if your response is, well, yeah, I think people know what the culture is all about, that's great, but you're kind of fooling yourself. What I would ask you to do is that this weekend, and whether you're a red wine drinker, a white wine drinker, a beer drinker, a brown liquor, a white liquor, a teetotaler, and maybe you just want a sweet tea, but take the time to put pen to paper and come up with a culture statement that is something that will govern the relationships within your business. Every single business in the world has a culture. The question is, as the owner or the leader of the organization, did you define that? Or did it just happen along the way and morphed into where it is now? This is a great thing to take some time and put to paper so that it's not just in your head, it's out in the market, and it's something for everyone to see. When you think about seeing your reflection, another way to approach culture is the communication that you're getting back. One of the tenets that we've used forever at Action Coach is communication is the response you get. So the people that are coming into your business and into your life are the ones that are being attracted to that culture. So if you're attracting the wrong people, part of that is the culture that you've defined. I'm a big fan of Jim Rohn, he's a great business philosopher out of Philadelphia. He's got an extremely annoying voice that you could recognize anywhere, but the guy constantly gives out pearls of wisdom. So if you'd like, if you would shoot Gerald an email, and you'll see his contact information at the end, we'll be happy to send you a 4.5-hour presentation that Jim Rohn did with no notes, by the way. So that's a heck of a lot of skill right there. But just put it on in the background and let it wash over you as you're doing your day-to-day work, okay? But one of the comments that he made was that when you think about a business, it's not what am I doing here, but what am I becoming here? Not what I'm doing at this job, what am I becoming at this job? Not what am I doing in this culture, what is this culture helping me become? So give some thought to the long game, which is the development of a culture that attracts the right people, because we've all either worked in or seen cultures that were not great, right? My last corporate gig was in furniture. Furniture was in an industry in total decline, where the only thing people were worried about was how to save their job. And it was a horrific place to work, one that I drove almost an hour each way and back to go there. And I never got speeding tickets on the way there. I always got speeding tickets on the way home because I couldn't get out of there fast enough. So make sure that the people that work for you guys, or that are part of your team, part of your organization, if they're getting speeding tickets on the way to work, that's good, unless there's some huge penalty for them being late. If they're getting speeding tickets on the way home from work, that's a bad sign. All right. Another thing to keep an eye on, if people are going to really engage the culture and embrace the company, watch people and how they go to lunch. What we find is that people that constantly go to lunch alone are going to be short timers for a company because they don't feel that sense of community. They don't feel that sense of belonging. Okay. Sorry. All right. So when you think about the heart of the matter, what I'd like you to give some thought to is, what are we trying to motivate and what are we trying to enroll and inspire? So if you would, grab a pen and make one dot. Now that's typically what happens when people start a business. There is one person in the company, and that one person has how many relationships? I'm hopeful you said one. If you said two, then we've got some other things to talk about. We were happy to refer you to a psychologist. But in this case, there's only one relationship because there's only one person. Now draw a second dot. You make your first hire. You have demand outstrip your ability to supply. You make that first hire, and now you have two people in the company. So my question for you is, how many relationships are there now? And the answer is two, right? Your relationship with the person on the team and their relationship with you. Add a third dot, because again, demand takes off. You have to make another hire. Now you've got three people in the company, and the number of relationships, just for speed, is 6. You add a fourth person to the company. The number of relationships is more. You add a fifth person. The number of relationships is lots. You add a sixth person. The number of relationships is tons. And at this point, it is impossible for you as the owner or someone you've designated as the general manager to manage those relationships. So if relationships are the heart of the matter, and we need to be better at managing those relationships and the communication that comes with it, then the culture is the fabric that holds those relationships together, that keeps people on the same page, that keeps people going in the same direction. I've always likened it to it, and we've got 3 girls, and they're a little bit old for Finding Nemo now, but there was a time, and I'm sure the parents can relate to this, where we watched Finding Nemo every day, sometimes twice. And in the original one, there's that scene where the tuna starts swimming in the same direction so they can pull the net off the boat. And the great thing about having a well-defined and almost overly embraced culture is that your business becomes the tuna all pulling in the same direction so that they can pull the net off the boat. All right? So that's what the heart of the matter is all about. When you think about how culture drives performance, if we're all on the same page, if we're all pulling in the same direction, if we all have common goals, then it's easy to start having performance. So some great resources around this, that if you're looking to build great culture. Anything by Lencioni, but his classic is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. If you've not read that, this would be a great weekend to do it. He's a storyteller, which means the books read very quickly, but they're very impactful. And at the end, he always has here's how you use the information. And I love authors that at the end of their book say, I hope you enjoyed the story. Here's what you do with it. One of the things that we've done here at the office is develop a self-scoring assessment. So if you'd like to get that, again, you'll see Gerald's contact information at the end. Just pop him a note so that we can start looking at, how do I build the culture of my company, much like how in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what has to happen first, what has to happen second, so that we can become high performance. If you think about companies you've been in that had bad culture, how much time was invested in sabotaging the performance? Or maybe not directly sabotaging it, but being indifferent about the performance. When you run a small business, and by small again, gang, I only mean in size of revenue, not in impact of the community. When you run a small business, everyone has to be focused on performance for you to be a great entity long term. So when we think about the mechanics of it, it's the great cultures that have great customers that provide a great service at a premium price so that the business can be more profitable and then decide what to do with those profits. Okay? So how does one create a culture? And the question becomes, all right, if we could back up one more step from there, who is the guardian of the culture? And it's my belief that it's the owner's or the leader's job to be the guardian of the vision, the guardian of the culture, and the great communicator of both to the team. All right? So the first thing you have to do is decide, what do we stand for? Put pen to paper, run it past people you know to see if these ideas make sense, if it is a current reflection of the culture of the business, and if not, come up with a game plan to bridge where you are to where you want to be from a culture perspective. Now, one of the things that you'll have access to later, and again, you'll see Gerald's contact info, is a culture starter kit, which basically talks about questions that need to be asked. It talks about adjectives that you can use to start building your points of culture in your business. And when I think of points of culture, 4 or 5 is not enough. 20 to 30 is too many. So there's kind of a sweet spot in there of a dozen or a baker's dozen. That would be a great place to start when it comes to the culture of your business. All right. So the best way to start to create a culture is to become intentional, almost a zealot about creating that culture. When you think about communication and how we interact with each other, think about how often will we get together physically so that everyone is informed as to what's going on with the culture. All right. It's interesting, as you look at modern society and as you look at the technology that is out there to allow people to communicate, there's some really interesting studies. One of them is called Bowling Alone. And I've got, by the way, a 13-year-old daughter who's in the height of being a 7th grade girl, which means she is mean as a snake, right? There's nothing more vicious than a 7th or 8th grade girl. And what's interesting is the impact of social media and cell phones on kids today. Now, if you've listened to Simon Sinek, if you've read all the research, it all says the same thing, and that it is horrific. Horrific. We have never in our lives had an easier way to communicate with people. And at the same time, we have never felt more alone. So one of the greatest things, and let me say that one more time because I want it to sink in. We have never had more ways and more easier ways to communicate with people, and we have never felt more alone. So what does that mean for you? If you want to build culture, you build it face to face. If you want to build culture, you build it one-on-one, you build it as small teams, you build it as groups. This notion of putting together a culture statement, putting it on the wall, and believing that people will embrace it is not effective. You have to live it, you have to breathe it, and you have to be belly to belly with people when you talk about it. Which means if you guys all work in the same area, fantastic. You need to go throw axes and you need to do things that build camaraderie amongst the group. If you have people working all over the place, you need to get on the road and go see them. Because the power of communication, as this picture depicts, and some of this stuff is obviously stock art, which is fine, but you notice that they're not 4 people looking at laptops on Skype. They're 4 people that are sitting together. So please never underestimate the power of communication by being live, being face to face. And what I find, there was a book written not long ago. It was called The 4-Hour Workweek. Now, The 4-Hour Workweek sounds fantastic, but it was a terrible book because basically it said, hey, outsource everything you can to countries that are not here. The one takeaway I found from it, though, is that there are people that need scheduled one-on-one attention. And the way you know that these people are in your company is because they stand at the door after you guys have had your little chat, and they're going through a mental Rolodex of all the questions they've ever wanted to ask you because they're not sure when they're going to get your attention again. And if you have people like that in your company, then what you need to do is schedule regular interactions with them face to face so that they know that they're going to have some undivided time. I keep working on it, and I need to get better at it all the time. But I've gotten to the point now when people want to talk to me face to face, I close my laptop and physically turn my body towards them so that they can have my attention. I turn my phone over or I put it away, because the best way to communicate is face to face without the distractions that modern technology are providing. So again, as you're jotting down notes, which hopefully you're about on page 2 at this point, what I would ask you to do is, what are going to be your physical cues to make sure that you're giving people the full attention that they deserve? So when you think about individuals and playing to strengths, what we like to look at are, what are the 6 keys of a winning team? All right. So grab a pen really quick, because the 6 keys of a winning team start with strong leadership. Right? And that strong leadership comes from you. It's being the guardian of the vision. It's being the cheerleader of the culture. It's being unbelievably consistent in the way you communicate with people. It means coming into the office in the morning, with a little bounce in your step, even if you're not in the mood for it. It means being the most enthusiastic person about what your business does and the impact it has on the community. That's what strong leadership is all about. And it's about being consistent as the day is long, because your job as someone who owns a business, someone that leads a team, ultimately is to do 2 things. You want to find the best people to be on the team, and you want to find the best customers to work with. So you basically become a full-time recruiter. All right? And that's what being a strong leader is all about. Secondly is common goal. Where are we going? What's the purpose of this business? What are we trying to accomplish long term? Right? What impact do we want to have on the community? What impact do we want to have on our customers? Right? What kind of pride do we feel as being part of this organization? Number 3 is rules of the game. Culture is the backstop to the rules of the game. How do we interact with each other? What are some of the rules? I was reading an article the other day where Google's going to start to outlaw or limit phones coming into meetings because it becomes such a distraction. What are the rules of the game and how we interact with each other? Number 4, action plan. Who does what by when? Every person on your team should have a 90-day action plan of what they're supposed to accomplish in the next quarter, so that we can keep pushing the business forward a little bit at a time. Right? I love 5-year goals. I love 3-year goals. I love 1-year goals. What I really love are 90-day goals that lead to the 1, 3, and 5. And what I love even more is my checklist for tomorrow of what I have to accomplish to make sure I'm on plan. So invest the time to build an action plan for the people in the company. Number 5, support risk taking. It's interesting, because of some corporate environments that people have been in, their comfort zone is extremely small. And what we need to do as people that are leading organizations is help that comfort zone get larger. Because over time, again, you don't want to be the one coming up with all the ideas, coming up with all the decisions, making all the plans. That's why you're hiring a great team, so that they can do a lot of that work for you, right? And so help them take risks, not the ones that'll ruin the business, but if no one's making mistakes, then they're not taking any risk, which means you are staying stagnant. And there's no greater way to kill a business than to be stagnant. Right? And then the last one is 100% involvement and inclusion. It is your job to pull everybody in to what's going on in the business. It's their job to be involved. And so where I hear about this a lot of time is, it's the salespeople that are too busy or too successful to come to sales meetings. Yet no one's too busy and no one is too successful to come to a meeting that talks about the culture and the future of the business. Absolutely not. And if they're not willing to do that, then maybe they'd be better served to work somewhere else. And if the culture of your company is that great, then the customers are not going to go with the salesperson. The customers are going to stay with you. Right? That's how you know the business is great, that the team can change should they choose to. but the customer base works with your company, not with an individual within your company. All right. So when you think about playing to strengths, help people start to take a couple of gambles, a couple of risks, so that they can grow as individuals. Going back to Jim Rohn, what are they becoming working in your business? Not what are they doing, what are they becoming? So let's talk about motivation for a second. And it's interesting, the studies are consistent. People are motivated by money to a certain point. So if you look at wherever you are in the country, in North Carolina, they have to get to 55 grand. After 55 grand, the incremental money has a less than consistent return on motivation, right? If they're able to cover their bills, then something else has got to start pushing them forward for most people. Not all, but for most. And typically what moves them on, what keeps that engagement going, is a sense of relevance or purpose and how what they do is important to the business, how the business is important to the customer, and how the customer is important to the community. So yes, we cannot just sit on the hill and in the flowing robes and play acoustic guitar all day, right? We have to actually do work. We have to actually get paid for the work. What I'm suggesting to you is that it's not always the money that motivates people. Some of it might be recognition. Most of it's going to be relevance. Help me understand where I fit in what this business is trying to accomplish. And so if you think about the 8 cylinders of a highly effective engine, and you break it into 4 different terms, you've got the body and the mind, and you've got the heart and the spirit. And what we find is that too many businesses focus on the body and mind and not enough on the heart and the spirit. The other thing we want to do is celebrate like crazy when things go well. It's interesting as business owners that when things go well, we say, yep, it should. And when things don't go well, we're pretty good at beating the crap out of ourselves. And so what I'd like to see you do is change that. So if you would, grab a pen. I'm sure you guys all have your goals for first quarter. And when you accomplish that goal for first quarter, what is it that you're going to do for yourself? Right? Are you going to go take a little trip? I mean, if you haven't been to, oh goodness, what's it called? It's in the mountains in Virginia, not too far away. All right, I'll get it for you. The place is awesome. You know, you're going to go to the beach. You're going to go to Asheville. Are you going to go someplace cool? Are you going to buy a new golf club? Are you going to go buy a guitar that you've been wanting to buy? What are you going to do to celebrate your success? And at the same time, when people hit home runs and make progress in your business, what are you going to do to help them celebrate their success? What I would submit to you is make sure you help or find celebration with them in something that they enjoy. And here's what people don't enjoy. They don't enjoy a gift card to a shopping center. You know what? Let me rephrase that. They'll enjoy the gift card as long as there's money on it. And then as soon as the money is gone from the gift card, they will have forgotten it. So like me, I'm a big U2 fan. You know, one of the Christmas presents my wife Jen gave me a couple years ago was to go see U2 in DC. It was phenomenal and probably the best Christmas gift she's ever given me, because it was an experience that resonates with my personality more so than just another something to put in a drawer to wear at some point. So think about, even with customers, be very specific about giving them rewards and celebrating the success in ways that are pertinent and relevant to them. All right. So when you think about employee engagement, it's all about keeping them on board, right? So we've got the right ones. Let's make sure that we keep them. And there's just 5 things that I want you to give some thought to, and we're starting to run out a little bit of time here, so I'm sorry about that. But one is transparency, right? So we want to make sure that we're kind of full disclosure. Here's the state of the union. I was talking to a client of ours today about, you know, what is a metric or 2 metrics that by looking at the board every day, the team will know exactly how the business is doing. It was interesting when I was at Leveler Blinds, which is what moved me from Wisconsin, which is not very nice weather-wise, to North Carolina, which is glorious weather-wise. They brought in the newer version of Chainsaw Al because the division was not performing. And the first thing he did was take down the weekly and month-to-date sales numbers from the common area within the building. And it destroyed the culture. I mean, the culture wasn't great, but that just set it back even more because now we didn't even know what was going on with the business. Right? Nurturing. When you bring someone in from the outside, make sure you pair them up with someone in the business. I mean, you see this in non-business organizations all the time. People join a church, they hook them up with someone at the church. They join the chamber, they get them an ambassador. All over the world, you see people intentionally connecting new people with people that have been there for a while. And yet in business, we give them a training manual, we give them some videos to watch, and we say, hey, let's go. So make sure that you've got this nurturing, kind of this onboarding process, because the onboarding is so crucial to the longevity of the person on the team. You know, I got hired by Newell. It was a great gig. They moved me from Chicago to Milwaukee. That was not bad, not great. I got there the first day. The lady said, Steve, we're excited you're here, which was great to hear. She said, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks. I said, okay. And she said, here are some system manuals for you to read because your computer won't be here for another week. Now, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, gang. This was in the late 90s. But here I was in a new town, didn't know a soul. And for the next 2 weeks, I was supposed to basically read the dictionary. I decided that afternoon that I wasn't going to stay. Right? Now, for a big company, thousands of employees, hiring mishap is a financial inconvenience. For a small business, a hiring mishap can be devastating. So make sure that you onboard people the right way so that they fall in love with your company almost as much as you're in love with your company. All right? So make sure you're engaging, and this also circles back to communication. Spend that one-on-one time. Now the question then becomes, all right, if I'm trying to find the right people, what are some tools that are out there? What are some of the sciences that are out there? If you look at, there are a lot of different assessments. There are a lot of things that you can use to make sure you're bringing the right person on board. In the old days, we would grab some resumes off of Career Builder or Monster or whatever, and we would rely on the what the resume said. And the reality was you could take that stack of resumes, you could throw it up in the air, whichever one landed upside down by your left foot, that's who you should hire. Because that's how scientific that kind of hiring process was. And so what's happened over time, and I'm sure you guys have been through some of these batteries, is there are tons of personality assessments that are out there now to make sure that you're hiring the right person. Because if you rely solely on the resume, and in my mind, it's a little bit like Snow White, right? Now, I've got 3 girls. I know the Disney stories of the princesses very well. If you are not familiar, Snow White has got a mean stepmother because her dad remarried. Stepmother's not very nice. Prince comes around. She's kind of the chambermaid because of her sisters, her stepsisters. And she goes to the ball because the fairy godmother puts her in this beautiful gown, turns a couple of mice into some horses, makes a big pumpkin into a carriage. All that's great. So at the gala, Snow White drops the glass slipper, and now the prince is trying to find the lady that owns the glass slipper. Because at midnight, she turns back into what she was before the fairy godmother turned her into the belle of the ball. So what we find is that resumes are like Snow White's slipper. If all you do is look at a resume, it may not actually be the person that you're going to get at the end. You know, there were a lot of sports coaches that got in trouble because they were embellishing resumes. So if we want to be scientific and take advantage of things that are available, some of these are personality assessments. I know Gerald's got a great history in working with companies to develop the culture and using some of the science that is out there to make sure that we get the right fit the first time. So give some thought to not only the onboarding process to build a great culture, but also how are you getting people to the business to make sure that you're picking from the right crop. I mean, another thing that we have used for years is called the 4-hour hiring format. And that's a very expedited deselection process so that we can get to the right people to be in the right company, in the right roles, so that our company can be awesome. All right? So give some thought to, if you're not using these kinds of things, how can we roll these out into our recruitment process? Because again, gang, you guys are recruiters. Your recruiters are a great team, and you're recruiters of great people. Some other ones that we've used in the past, we use DISC, we use BAC. There's some other ones out there. Right now they're doing the NFL Combine. You may have heard of the Wonderlic test. You give a lot of the athletes. There's a company called Human Metrics that's out there. And then we also work with a Dr. Alessandro, who's got a battery of both tests for internally and externally. Okay. So give some thought to taking the science up on your hiring process a little bit more. And the last, as we start to wrap up here, gang, embracing your failures. So when you go to 6 keys to a winning team, number 5, support risk taking. When they take risks, they will fail. And that's good, because failing means 2 things. 1, they tried something new, which means they're open to change. And we want people working in our company that's open to change. Number 2, they went through the failure process and came through on the other side a little bit stronger, as long as you didn't hammer them constantly and publicly for the failure. So again, there's nothing wrong with failing. We just want to fail in little steps and fail at the same thing only once typically.